Hi, I'm Jacqueline.
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes.
Happy September. It's been September, hasn't it? It's a couple
Yeah, it
weeks
turned
into
September.
September.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whoops. Well,
A little
it's
bit.
still August here, so I don't know. I thought I was on something, but onto something or on something too, I guess.
Yeah, my August was so busy, like
Yeah.
closing on a house, and then I went on a trip, and then I went on another trip, and then I forgot, like, we had this whole last week of August. Like, when we were trying to plan our girls' night, I was like, after your baby shower, I was like, August is over. I didn't
You're like,
realize I
it's
had
didn't I need August to be
6 more
over.
days. Didn't know I had 6 more
Right.
days in it. I needed to not be so hot. We had a little false
Yes.
fall, and now it's like really, really hot.
It's so hot. Ugh. Yeah, because it was very nice for a couple weeks, and then it was like, just kidding, we're gonna get back up to almost 100 degrees
Yeah.
again
hmm
in almost September.
Yeah, just crazy. But I had a thought today, and I want to know if anyone else relates. And you might relate, but I don't know if you're gonna relate.
Okay.
Okay, because it has to do with my boobs.
Okay.
This is weird, but so I was working out today, and you know how they ask you to like hold a dumbbell like goblet style?
Yes.
I struggle so hard to do that
Because you
because,
gotta hold it out here.
yeah. And then I feel like I have bad shoulder posture because if
Yeah.
not, it's basically laying on my boobs. And so then I'm not really holding it. It's kind of laying there.
Yeah. I mean, I do have that problem now that I have this
Yeah,
belly
I
that's in the
figured
way.
you I
So
figured you had the problem now, not normally. But I'm wondering, like, I've started doing I think they call it bow tie. So I hold it like
Okay.
this because I'm
Yeah.
like, it's the same thing. I don't really think it's just weighted. I don't really think it's working
So
anything different.
okay, so here's my suggestion. So for those exercises, you just take the bra off and then you could just
Put it right in the middle.
I wish that was visual was
Unzip it and let them just fall into each armpit and put it right in between.
you won't even have to hold it. They'll just do the work for you.
It'll be a boob workout. But like, I was just like, it's just so annoying because you try to have perfect posture and you're trying to like hold it out, but then it's like, I can't go far enough out with good posture to
Yeah,
account for my boobs.
because then it's like again, it just changes the
Yeah, and I
what
feel like
muscle groups you're working.
the shoulders kind of start to rise when you're trying to like,
Yeah,
well, you can't. And then
I
you're
can see
also
that.
trying to do something else. Like you're not
Yeah,
just holding it.
just
So,
holding the the weight.
so I've started just doing it like bow tie because I'm like, I can
Yeah,
do this and I feel like I'm holding it.
that makes
But
sense. Yeah,
I
I
just wondered
definitely
if
have
anyone
to
else had that issue.
modify everything I do right now. So I feel your pain on that.
Yeah.
Like,
Man,
especially when I
boobs,
try to
they just
do
get in the way.
like that exercise where you're like doing a plank and then you like bring up one leg and like stretch on the other side. You know what I mean?
Oh, like opposite arm and leg?
Well, like yeah, but I guess it's like you're like one leg is like in like a lunge, but like you still have the other leg like in a plank and then you like open up on the side.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, that like I feel like my leg that's like in the lunge is like in a different room because I have to
Yeah.
have an over and I'm like, I don't know if this is helping or
Yeah.
hurting anything,
I
but
usually don't ever have good enough balance for that. Like I try really hard. It's just I'm so
yeah.
top heavy, then everything's just
I
it's
can see
thrown
that.
off a little bit.
Yeah. Can imagine that
But
makes it
yeah,
more difficult.
I was just thinking about that today. I was like, it's just so hard out here with boobs. You almost hit yourself if you try to do burpees, you try to almost give yourself a black eye.
Yeah.
It's just they get in the way a
They
lot.
do be getting in the way. They
Yeah. Anyway, that was just my thought today. We sat here forever being like, what do we talk about to open it up with? And I was like, I had a thought today, but I don't remember what it was. And then I remembered it and I was like, it's not a great one, but
and
it's
I was like, well,
one.
that's fine because I had nothing. So it's gonna be better than that. So, I also am very annoyed right now because I got a new phone screen protector, like the glass screen
hmm
protectors, because my other one was like starting to crack on the side and then like really cracked this weekend. So I was like, okay, I gotta get a new one. And I almost had it bubble free. And there's just
Oh, that
one.
one bubble.
And it's just driving me crazy because it's like I was so close and I could
You
not get it
know,
out to save my life.
I got to tell you too, and I know this is not what you should do, but I cannot do those to save my life. I will literally go to the Verizon store and spend an extra $20 so that they apply it. And I know that's not budget friendly, whatever, but I literally can't do it. And I'm like, yeah, if you mess this up, you got to get a new one out and fix it. So I'm gonna pay the extra $20 to come get you to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't blame you. I also usually crack it within the first like 3 weeks anyway, so I'm like, does it even matter? I mean, it'll be fine. Like,
Yeah, I had to get a different one this time. I'm at the point now that every time I go in there, they're like, "You sure you don't want to just want a new phone?" And I'm like, no, because I don't have a phone payment right now.
no,
I
I want this
got
phone.
it's like a liquid something,
Oh,
liquid
okay.
glass.
Yeah.
It's like a liquid they put on there, and it's really held up so far. So
Okay. Good to know. Because I
pretty
like the one
good.
that I use. Like, I mean, I always crack it, but like my phone is always fine. So I'm like, well, it's doing
Yeah.
its job. So,
That happened to me one time. I went to an NFL game over Thanksgiving and I
hmm
dropped my phone in the bathroom face down and I picked
mm,
it up and it was completely shattered. And I was like, oh my God. And I thought it
yep.
was my phone and it was just the phone case. And I was like,
Yes. Like, thank God.
ooh, dodged a bullet.
Yeah, it is very terrifying that we carry these very expensive computers on our person at all times that fall out of our pockets eight
I
million
drop it
times a
so
day.
many times.
Like, can
Like,
you
I need a
imagine?
new phone case. Like, look, like this, you can't really see it. This whole thing is
I
broken
guess,
off right now.
like, imagine if we like dropped our MacBooks that many times in a day. Like, we would not
No.
be okay.
I like throw my phone. I don't even try to. It just somehow like throws itself out of my hands. I'm like, what is happening?
Like, how did that end up over there? Oh, anyway. Okay, well, I guess now that we've shared all of these riveting updates that I know you all
Yes, these
were
wonderful
dying to hear.
insights. Yeah, we can go ahead and get into today's case. And it's just kind of a sad one, kind of a
Yeah.
bummer. Like I knew about it, but I didn't know a lot of the details of it. And it just sucks.
Yeah.
But we are going to go ahead and give a trigger warning just here at the beginning that this case does involve domestic violence, quite a bit of domestic violence.
hmm
So if that is something you do not want to listen to, cannot listen to, we completely understand, and we will see you back next week.
Yes.
So, our sources for today were an episode of E! True Hollywood Story. It was on Dominique Dunne. TMZ investigates killing a movie star, grave injustice, and the justiceforhomicidevictims.org website. So Dominic Dunne was the daughter of Dominic and Ellen Dunne. So Dominic married Ellen, who went by Lenny, and we'll call her Lenny for like the rest of the episode, Griffin in 1954. Lenny was the daughter of a wealthy Arizona family, and 3 years later, the Dunns moved to Beverly Hills so Dominic could pursue a career in the film industry. They had Griffin and Alex, and then they had two daughters who died in infancy. And then on November 23rd, 1959, Dominic was born. And Lenny was so happy because she was like, I always just wanted a little girl. Like, I just really wanted a little girl. I was just so happy when she was
Mm.
born.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Especially after losing like her two daughters, like in infancy, and you're like, I want
Yeah.
my daughter. Like,
Yeah.
she was cherished by her family as well as family friends. Like a lot of her like brother's friends, like especially in the documentary, would like talk about her and how much they loved her, loved hanging around her. Dominic and Lenny actually divorced in 1965 when Dominique was still very young, and Dominique lived with her mother but maintained a close relationship with her father. And Griffin said Dominique just had this light about her. She was talented, she was devoted to their parents, and he was like, she was almost just like a breath of fresh air, like whenever you were around her. And she also loved to adopt animals, especially those in need. There was always a dog with a leg missing or like a cat who had something wrong that she was just always like picking up, grabbing, taking care of. She attended many private schools, including Fountain Valley High School in Colorado, and this is where she first became interested in acting. And after high school, Dominique spent a year in Florence studying Italian. During this time, Lenny developed multiple sclerosis, so Dominique returned home. And in the fall of 1978, Dominique decided to attend Colorado State University and majored in drama so that she could focus on her acting career. She loved to perform and just felt at home on stage. Dominique didn't stay there long, and by 1979, she was back in Los Angeles to try and get like her breakout role. She knew quite a few people in the industry. Again, her dad, I'm sure a lot of people know who Dominique Dunne is. He's pretty famous. So her dad had a pretty successful career in the film industry. A lot of family friends are in the film industry. So she had quite a few people who could kind of help her out. She got a few auditions, and within a week or two, she was actually getting some roles. And her first role was in The Diary of a Teenage Hitchhiker, which was like a TV movie. She enrolled in an acting workshop to help improve her acting skills, and her career soon started blossoming. And as she started getting onto sets, she just wanted everyone to be treated equally. So she would be friends with everyone, from like the driver to like the people who brought the food to like the actors, like everyone. Like she wanted everyone to know like they were important. She wanted everyone to be treated the same. Like everyone's important on this like set, and like this couldn't be possible without everyone there. So. And a lot of times we know that can get lost on people as they start getting like bigger and better roles. Some people kind of lose that. But so far, like she kind of kept that. So eventually, Dominique landed her first major motion picture in Steven Spielberg's Poltergeist, which I'm sure we've all heard of.
Just a small little film there.
Just a small little film. Do you know who the lead in that role was in the movie? The dad?
No.
Craig T. Nelson, who's also Parenthood, the like
Oh,
the dad
yeah.
dad in
Okay.
Parenthood.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So I mean pretty good. I mean, Craig T. Nelson, I think then and now is pretty big. So,
Yeah.
and I mean it's Steven Spielberg.
Yeah,
He's
exactly.
it's Steven Spielberg, yeah. Um, but Dominique played the eldest daughter, Dana Freeling. Poltergeist was a huge hit, as we mentioned. And after the success, like Dominique was just kind of having fun with some friends. She decided to like have a party. And in general, it just kind of ended up being a dud. Like it was just kind of like, this party wasn't as successful as we wanted it to be. And when they were cleaning up, two men came in. So John Thomas Sweeney was one of them and was talking to Dominique, and they quickly started dating. She was 22 and he was 26. Sweeney came from a very different upbringing than Dominique. He was born in Hazleton, Pennsylvania, which is a coal mining town, and he was the oldest of six in a poor Irish Catholic family. His father worked at a local plant, and his mother worked as a waitress. And his father had a drinking problem and was known to be abusive towards the children. And there was really like a cycle of abuse. His father would attack him, his mother, like he would try to step in when his dad was attacking his mom. He'd start attacking him, kind of abusive towards all the children, just not a good home life. And desperate to flee from this life, he decided to become a chef and started working at a local restaurant, Carmen's. It does seem, as we see a lot, that Sweeney also seemed to develop his father's temper. He could have a short temper and could get very angry. And so he took self-defense classes to try and like get his anger out, like try to find a positive way to get all this anger out. He also liked to paint, and his favorite painter was Salvador Dali, who was rumored to like paint in blood occasionally. And Sweeney decided to do that as well.
Oh,
I just
okay.
really hope it was his own blood.
Yeah, I'm like, I feel
Or
like that could be not very safe, but okay, you do you.
yeah, or animal blood, like something
Yeah.
kind of weird. But Sweeney then decided to move to LA in 1976 so that he could try to like actually find success as a chef instead of like his small hometown in Pennsylvania. He found a job at Ma Maison, which catered to celebrities and was a very coveted job. And Wolfgang Puck was actually the head chef. So I think we all know Wolfgang Puck's a pretty famous chef. So this was a pretty great job to kind of get in the door.
Yeah.
The atmosphere at Ma Maison could be very intense and high pressure. And at first, Sweeney loved it and like really flourished. And then in 1981, Wolfgang Puck left the restaurant, and Sweeney was the executive chef and took over when Wolfgang Puck left. So now Sweeney is like the head chef, which is like a very big deal to be like Wolfgang Puck's like prodigy. So Sweeney kind of seemed like a success story. You know, he leaves his abusive family in small town Pennsylvania. He becomes the head chef at like a well-known, esteemed West Coast restaurant. It's the American dream, you know? And this is the point he started dating Dominique. So Dominique's friend said that Sweeney came in and really just like swept her off her feet. He had all eyes for her. Like her friend was like, it wasn't really love at first sight. It was like Sweeney was just like obsessed with her and like really like won her over, like swept her off his feet. And people said he seemed to really care for her and he was funny and he was charming. And a few months in, Dominique and Sweeney moved in together in West Hollywood. A few friends were a little skeptical of Sweeney and his motives, especially this is right after Dominique is coming off of her Poltergeist fame. So I'm sure a lot of friends were being a little protective of her. But Dominique was in love, and she actually took Sweeney to New York City to meet her dad and her brothers. However, during this trip, Sweeney did show his temper. At a lunch place, another customer recognized Dominique from Poltergeist and just wanted to say hello to her. Sweeney did not like this and picked up the man and shook him. And this is, yeah, yeah,
Oh, that's a bit extreme.
yeah, just a guy wanting to be like, hi, like I loved you in Poltergeist. Then her boyfriend's just like picking you up and, you know,
Wow.
yeah. And at this point, he started to get kind of possessive of her and didn't want her to have friends, getting very jealous, kind of all of that. And Sweeney also started to believe she was sleeping with other men. Like there was no basis for this, just kind of his possessive jealousy saying this. And she was actually doing her next movie, which was a TV movie called The Shadow Riders with Tom Selleck and Sam Elliott. And he got upset at her doing it since like other men were in the film. Like, I guess thinking she's going to run off with Sam Elliott, where Sam Elliott is like a grown man at this point. Like, I don't know. It's wild,
Yeah,
wild. Especially for her, like those two names are big names even back then. So it's like, why can't you just be happy that she's like getting good
exactly.
roles?
Yeah.
So again, Sweeney seemed to have developed his father's alcoholism and abusive tendencies, and he would drink and get very explosive. Lenny remembered one time when Dominique came to her house crying and said Sweeney had hit her head against the floor several times and pulled out parts of her hair. So Dominique actually stayed with her mom for 2 days, and Sweeney showed up with flowers and apologized, and they did reconcile. However, 4 weeks later, on September 26, 1982, a friend and his girlfriend had come to visit Dominique and was going to stay with Dominique and Sweeney. So the two couples went out, they had dinner, drinks, had a good night. And when they came back to the house, they all went to bed. And the friend heard Dominique yelling for help. And Dominique came out a few minutes later, and Dominique showed like where Sweeney had choked her. So Sweeney was kind of like, again, being possessive of her. And she was like, can I just go to the bathroom? And he was like, yeah, sure. But like, she actually snuck out and was like trying to leave and drive away. So Sweeney ran out and jumped on the hood of her car as she drove off. He eventually got off the car and Dominique drove to a family friend's house. She was hysterical, obviously, because that's, you know, not a good night. Um, and the next morning, they took photos of her bruises. In one photo, she is smiling because her friend made a joke that she wouldn't need makeup for an audition that day. She was going up to play the part of a battered teenager, but this was kind of just like heavily criticized in the media because it's like a picture of her with these bruises and she's kind of smiling in a picture. So they're like, oh, and like
Yeah.
trying to, like critique her basically, which is like a common theme in this episode is like
Yeah.
blaming her, but it's like, oh no, like her friend was just trying to make her like smile when she's obviously
Exactly.
very upset. So the bruises on her episode that she actually did were mostly what Sweeney had actually done to her and like not makeup. So like they could actually use like a lot of the bruises and not
Wow.
have to do too much more.
Ugh.
And Dominique went into hiding after this. Sweeney was very desperate to find Dominique. He was trying to find her at her friends' houses. And Dominique contacted her friend Gloria Gifford and said they were breaking up. She said that he had to move out. She was keeping the house. And the only way she would even like begin to consider getting back together with him is if he went to therapy. And Dominique kind of seemed embarrassed about the whole situation, kind of like, I think that's common with victims is like, how did I let this happen to me? Like, and Sweeney actually started to show up to her acting classes, trying to see her. And then Sweeney did move out, but Dominique was kind of scared to go home. She called a locksmith to change the lock. And actually, when the locksmith was there, Sweeney drove by. So, like, he's obviously staking out the house, trying to find her. So Dominique tried to continue to work, and at this point, she's working on the TV series V. And the director said there were some days on set that she just didn't seem like fully there, like the situation was clearly bothering her, kind of like it was obvious to other people like how much the situation was like weighing on her. On October 25th, 1982, Dominique returned to the house. Dominique wrote Sweeney a letter saying that she just needed some time and she didn't want to talk to him at the moment. She was like, I just want to think everything through. I think it'll be better if we just like don't talk to each other, not on the phone. Like, I think we just need some time apart. And Sweeney really wanted to be back together. And he did go to therapy for his temper. And Sweeney is just like convinced based on this letter that they were going to get back together. But Dominique's friends were like, she was more so ready for like the relationship to end and kind of move on. And on October 30th, Sweeney had a chocolate mask made in Dominique's likeness, which is kind of creepy. They
Hmm.
showed a picture of
Mm-hmm.
it and it was kind of creepy.
Oh,
Um, I'm like, I don't want to eat a chocolate mask of my face.
yeah. No, no, no.
Yeah. So Sweeney had a friend leave it and some hand-carved pumpkins on her doorstep. So Dominique called Sweeney and said their relationship was over. She was like, I need you to stop. Like, this is over. We're not doing this anymore. And Sweeney tried to call her back, but she didn't answer. And Sweeney then called his therapist and said he was losing it and couldn't control himself anymore. So Dominique finally answered one call and tried to calm him down. And during this phone call, Dominique's co-star from the TV series V, David Packer, arrived to rehearse some lines. And this set Sweeney off. Like apparently he was at work when this happened, and they were like, his whole demeanor changed, and he was like, I have to go. And he left and went to her house. So she opened the door with the chain lock still on, and Dominique told David to wait inside and went outside to talk to Sweeney. So David heard Sweeney yelling and him kind of like banging on the house. And David actually called a friend who didn't answer and left a voicemail saying, if I die tonight, John Sweeney did it. Like that's kind of how scared he
Oh my
was of like
God.
this
Yeah.
situation. So David's like, okay, I'm going to try to just like put some music on and read my script. It's all going to be like, it'll be okay. Like, we're going to calm down. It wasn't okay, in case you're wondering. So eventually, Sweeney lunged at Dominique and pushed her on the ground. He started choking her and drug her across the yard to the house next door and down the driveway. And this is about 50 to 60 yards of Sweeney dragging her while choking her. So David heard Dominique yell and looked out the peephole but didn't see anyone. So he called the LAPD, and the dispatcher who answered told David if he was any kind of man, he would go out and help Dominique if he thought she was in trouble.
Like, what? Is it's not your job, sir?
Yeah. Yeah. They were like, if you're any kind of man, like, and you think she's in danger, like, you should just go help her.
Wow.
Yeah. So a few more minutes passed and the police didn't come. So David's like, okay, I guess I'll go outside. And he looked in the neighbor's yard and saw Sweeney kneeling over Dominique. So at 8:52 p.m., he went back inside, called LAPD again. And at this point, he's scared for his life as well. He's like, I'm really scared. He calls the LAPD. He leaves the house and then he goes to a payphone and calls the police again to be like, please help. Like, I need you to help. Like, I left. I need you to help. So officers finally arrived and found Sweeney and Dominique. And when they walked up, Sweeney put his hands in the air and said, I killed my girlfriend and I want to kill myself. So just like admits to it right there.
Wow. Wow.
So one officer arrested Sweeney and two others went to help Dominique, and they started CPR, and her heart actually started beating again, and she was placed on life support. And Sweeney was interviewed at the station, and the officer was like, he kind of seemed more concerned about himself than Dominique, like wasn't really seeing if she was okay, more about like self-preservation. So Dominique was in a coma, and many friends and family came and visited her. However, it was soon determined that Dominique was brain dead, so she wasn't really there anymore. It was just the machine that's keeping her alive. And on November 4th, doctors pulled Dominique off of life support, and her funeral was held 2 days later in Beverly Hills, and hundreds of people came.
So John Sweeney was charged with murder, and he was assigned to public defender Michael Adelson, and they tried to do a plea bargain where Sweeney would spend 7 years in prison. But the Dunne family was not satisfied with that and wanted a murder charge because 7 years for like brutally murdering your girlfriend? Okay.
Yeah.
So on July 19th, 1983, the trial began. So the heart of the case was whether this was murder or manslaughter. So the defense was trying to argue that it was actually manslaughter because it was in a moment of passion and not premeditated. As you can imagine, the media coverage was very intense, and it was reported that the judge, Burton Katz, asked the People magazine photographer to come in. So he said his glasses were tinted, and he was like, I have another pair. Like, I can send my bailiff to get them so you can see my eyes in the pictures. And the photographer's like, what? Like, that's why you brought me in here? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, like the photographer was interviewed and he was like, I was called to the judge's chambers. I'm like, yeah, yeah, I get it. Don't take pictures of the jury. Don't be a
Mm-hmm.
distraction. And then he just starts going on about his glasses. And I was like, what is happening?
He's like, you can't see my eyes well enough for your
Yeah.
pictures. Like, okay, that's a great concern right now. The judge also told the Dunn family that they better not whisper or cry or he would kick the family out. And it just really seemed that Katz just like hated the prosecutor for some reason. So the prosecutor, Stephen Barshop, tried to start strong in his opening statements. The coroner had estimated that Sweeney had strangled Dominique for 4 to 6 minutes, which is a very long time.
Hmm.
And Barshop brought out a stopwatch and asked the jury to remain silent for 4 minutes. Barshop also used a former girlfriend, Lillian Pierce, as a witness to show his history of domestic violence, and Judge Katz required that the jury leave the room during this testimony to see if it would be admissible or not. So Lillian said that Sweeney beat her at least 10 times. She had been to the hospital at least twice, once for a collapsed lung and once with a broken nose and ruptured eardrum. So, like, very severe injuries.
Yeah.
So the prosecution tried to tie the similarities to Lillian and Dominique. So Lillian had dated Sweeney for 2 years, and he got together with Dominique about a year after they broke up. So at one point, Sweeney actually got up and threw a Bible he had and tried to like run from the courtroom, and the bailiff tackled him. So like, what are you doing? And he was then handcuffed to his chair. But Judge Katz ruled that Lillian's testimony was inadmissible and was too prejudicial towards Sweeney, which I feel like we just had this come up in a case last week. Like this happens all the time.
Yeah. And it's just insane to me. I'm like, yeah, this is showing his pattern of abuse.
Exactly.
Like I was kind of talking about to like Kevin last night. I'm like, not that it makes it, there's no way it makes it better, but I'm like, it's different if like somebody who's like never done, like never
Yeah.
abused anyone, nothing, like snaps or whatever, versus this is like a clear pattern of like how abuse gets worse, like a clear
Yeah.
pattern of how people offending gets worse and how like this was gonna happen. And then they're just
Es-
like, can't show that.
yeah. Especially when so many domestic violence cases are just like he said, she said, which in this case, like
Hmm.
she's dead. So like I think we know what happened. But in so many domestic violence cases, it's he said, she said. But then you have five other she's being like, oh yes, this also happened to me. And it's like, oh
Hmm.
well, I can't do anything with that. I
No, don't
just
know what you mean to do. That's
who
just
knows?
slander. Because I'm like, I'm sure they could have gone to the hospital and like found her
Mm-hmm.
reports of her being
Yeah,
there. Like,
exactly.
crazy to me.
So obviously, this decision was a huge blow to the prosecution, and the Dunns were very upset about this because Sweeney had a history of violence, but now the jury could not hear that. So they're not getting this information to have this full picture of Sweeney and his history. So the prosecution kept on. They tried to testify about the prior attack from September 26th and the night of the murder. So David Packer testified that he saw Sweeney kneeling over Dominique, but that it could also look like he was trying to resuscitate her. So Adelson asked the judge to throw out the first-degree murder charge, saying that the prosecution had not proven premeditation, and the judge agreed. So obviously Dominique's friends and family were very upset, and they were still going for a second-degree murder charge. So Sweeney took the stand to talk about their relationship. He said they exchanged gifts and loved each other very much. He said some of their arguments had occurred after Dominic had been drinking, but like she's not the one that hit him and then later killed him. So like what?
Yeah, like even if your fights mostly happen after one person's been like drinking, like she's not the one like attacking you. Like you're
Exactly.
choking her. Like what?
Exactly. And he tried to portray her as someone who like slept around as well. And so obviously her father, Dominic, is very upset about this because now Sweeney's past could not be brought up at all, but they can try and slander Dominique's name and her past, and that's fine. So Lenny said she felt like Dominique was the one on trial during this. Sweeney brought up the letter that Dominique had sent him and that it was like giving him hope that the relationship would be repaired. And when Sweeney showed up that night, Dominique told him that she lied and she didn't love him anymore. He said he lost control and attacked her. He said he blacked out, and when he woke up, Dominique was near death and he just like broke down in tears. And unfortunately, like some of the jury bought this and they just viewed him as this like lovesick boyfriend being pulled back and forth versus this man who had a history of abusive relationships.
Yeah.
So before the jury could deliberate, they were sent with instructions, like 100 pages of instructions. And obviously the jury is confused and asked for like notes, but Judge Katz would only repeat what the instructions said. And he claimed that he could not change any words, but Barship said that that's not the case because I feel like that's also your job as a judge, just to make sure that the jury has clear instructions. And if they're confused, you need to clear that up.
Yeah, he tried to like in one of his like interviews, he was like, if I changed a single word, then that's misconduct. The whole case is thrown out. And then like the jury was like, the judge kept like saying like, would an ordinarily reasonable man do this? And they're like, what does that mean? What is an ordinarily reasonable man? Like, what does that mean? And he was like, ordinarily, it's like the Schitt's Creek. You fold in the cheese. Okay, but like, what does that mean? Fold in the cheese. It's
fold
like,
in the cheese. You fold it in.
So like they're being like, can you help us? And he's like, no.
Yeah. The jury also asked the judge 4 times to clarify what intent to kill means in legal terms, and Katz refused. So the jury is very confused with all of these instructions. They're asking for clarification and they're not getting it. So John Thomas Sweeney Jr. was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter and assault for the prior altercation on Dominique. So obviously the Dunnes are devastated. I also feel like I said obviously 800 times, but like this is just so like...
It's so absurd. It's just absurd that this was the outcome of this case.
Involuntary manslaughter. Like that's what you get when you like accidentally hit someone with a car.
That's exactly what like Dominique was saying. He was like, they're acting like this is somebody who like drove on the wrong side of the road and killed someone, not someone who strangled and drugged them for 4 to 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Like how, honestly, at that point, like to hold like, and also having like the prosecution like have you sit there in silence for 4 minutes. Like, can you imagine sitting in silence for 4 minutes? It's a long time. And like a friend was also like, literally like grab your wrist and then just like watch your hand for 4 minutes. Like, it's absurd. Like, how is that not crossing into first-degree murder? Because like you had every opportunity to stop in those 4 to 6 minutes.
Exactly. This isn't like a single gunshot where it's like you made a split-second decision and then it was over. It's like this, you kept doing this over and over and over. So many groups for women's rights protested this verdict. On November 10th, 1993, Sweeney was sentenced, and before sentencing, Dominique's brother, Griffin, gave the judge a petition that had 1,800 signatures on it saying, "We're outraged by the verdict. We feel the verdict was a vindication of Sweeney's vicious crime." So Judge Katz said before the sentencing that he wanted it on the record that Sweeney was a murderer and his crime was murder and not manslaughter, and is kind of like blaming the jury for coming up with the wrong verdict.
And he was like
And
yelling. Like there's a clip of this out here. He was like, "You are a murderer and you should have been charged with murder and this is heinous. And if this isn't murder, I don't know what it or if this isn't malice, I don't know what it is." Like all this stuff and people were like, "What? What?"
yeah,
And then the jury like comes back and is like, "We asked for your help and now you're throwing us under the bus?" Like,
exactly. It's like maybe you could have answered their questions when they asked them instead of now blaming them. So people were shocked, but feel like Katz was just trying to smooth things over because of this verdict and because of the fact that so many people were upset over it. And they think he was just trying to get the heat off of himself for the way the trial was handled. The prosecution felt that he was trying to buddy up with them now, but like obviously way too late at this point. Sweeney was sentenced to 6 years for manslaughter and 6 months for assault. Yeah. 6 years and 6 months. This was the maximum sentence, but he only had to serve half of that sentence.
And Judge Katz tried to be like, "I did the best I could and I made sure it ran like consecutive instead of concurrent, which isn't normal." And I'm like,
great. You got an extra 3
yeah,
months.
okay,
Cool.
cool.
Like, so when she was asked who she blamed most, Lenny said Judge Katz. Lenny joined a support group for parents of murdered children, and she also went on to create the Justice for Homicide Victims group, and they want to ensure that victims have just as many rights as the accused. This organization is still around today, and they aim to provide support in dealing with the pain and suffering associated with homicide. They also provide support for victims' families who are fighting for their rights, and they have a section of their website dedicated to resources for victims' families, but a lot of that is California specific. On July 14th, 1996, Sweeney was released from prison. He went to a Dodgers game shortly after. He said that he'd found God when in prison and was very religious now. Don't they all say that? So shortly after that, he landed a job at the Chronicle, which was a very popular restaurant in Santa Monica, and he was making like $80,000 a year, again in 1996.
1996 money.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
That's probably like triple that by now.
I know, literally.
So Lenny and her Justice for Homicide Victims group quickly went to action, and they handed out pieces of paper at the restaurant that said, "The hands that prepare your food today, we'd like for you to know, strangled to death Dominique Dunne." Which, like,
I was like,
get it.
Snaps.
Yes.
Snaps. I mean, snaps. Like you get on the stand, you killed our daughter, get on the stand, make her like she is the one in the wrong, and then you come out here and get this nice job. Not on our watch.
Nope. We're the judge, the jury, there's so many things that happened in this case. We're just going to take matters into our own hands. So a boycott followed, and he was fired. He did quickly find another job, but the family and friends got together and got him fired at least 7 more times. So they just kept doing it everywhere he goes.
Yeah, and like in the TMZ investigates, like they were all kind of like, yeah, we just kept following around. Like they're kind of laughing, but I'm like, I mean, I would do the same thing. And like one guy was like, we even had someone who was like, if you need to like off him in prison, like we got you. But we're like, no, we're not gonna do that. But like, we're gonna come after you.
Yeah. Okay, this says 1989 he was released from parole, but it said he got out of prison in 96, which, so he was sentenced in 93. So is that 99 probably?
Probably.
Because he was sentenced in 93, got out in 96, so I feel like 99 would make sense.
I feel like the years are all a little off here, but this might be because I was watching 2 different things, but
okay. In 1999, Sweeney was released from parole and he moved to the Pacific Northwest. And then he legally changed his name to John Morrow. So even after he changed his name, they still tried to follow him and find him. If he was dating someone, they would get in contact, like let her know his history. And today he works as a chef at a retirement community, and he has made a few videos that were posted online. So he's out there a little bit for some reason. In the 2024 TMZ Investigates episode, Lillian Pierce spoke for the first time since the trial. She said she was 30 when she started dating Sweeney in the 70s. She said he would push her down the stairs, he would beat her chest, and it was all very routine at the end. When he was angry, he attacked. So 2 of the jury members were a part of this episode, and they were very moved by Lillian's testimony, and they believe that Judge Katz and they believe that Judge Katz should have allowed this testimony to show this pattern of behavior. And both of these members agreed that with this testimony, they would have changed their verdict. So again, just
Yeah,
goes to
like
show how important that prior history of violence is in cases like this.
yeah, like even like watching like it was like on a little tablet, like watching Lillian talk, like one of the jurors like started crying, being like,
Mm,
I feel so bad because I didn't know any of this. Like
yeah,
I didn't know. And like hearing this, like I would have changed my verdict 100%.
yeah. TMZ TMZ Investigates also found a 2000 case from Northern California against John Sweeney. So, a woman had filed a restraining order against him. She said that he pulled her by her ponytail, shoved her head in a bathtub, and pushed her against a wall and put his hands on her collarbone. So, this woman actually had a baby with Sweeney. She was able to run away with their baby and hasn't seen him since then. She did not feel comfortable appearing on camera, and Sweeney was never charged with these crimes. TMZ did find him at his home, but he refused to talk. In 1990, Lenny had to retire from her organization due to her multiple sclerosis, and she died on January 9th, 1997. Dominique's career flourished as a journalist and author, and he became a huge part of the O.J. Simpson trial. So the Goldmans quoted him as a huge help during the trial, and that he was a journalist who always tried to side with the victims and support them. Dominique died on August 26, 2009, from bladder cancer. The Dunne family pushed for stronger laws for domestic violence charges and beefing up sentencing, and Griffin Dunne continued his career. He's credited with many directing and producing credits. He's also starred in many films and television shows, most recently as Uncle Nicky in This Is Us, which Courtney and I did not know until this, and we were like, oh, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, like I didn't know who he was. And then like
Yeah,
putting that connection, I was like, that is crazy because he was one of my favorite characters on This Is Us. He
yeah,
made me cry more than any other character, I think.
so much. Yeah, definitely. So Griffin continues to try and raise awareness for domestic violence and for victims in the justice system. And he said this is why so many people are scared to come forward because of the way they're ridiculed. Griffin also just released a book called The Friday Afternoon Club, a family memoir. So with this case, and also with the recent release of the movie It Ends With Us, we would like to share the hotlines for help if you are experiencing domestic violence. So the National Domestic Violence Hotline is 800-799-7233. You can also text BEGIN, BEGIN, to 88788. Their website also has further resources as well, and that is thehotline.org. And that is the very sad murder of Dominique Dunne and everything that her family has tried to do since then.
Yeah, just this case is really tough, and especially with It Ends With Us in the media right now and all of that, I was like,
Yeah.
a lot if that's hard for you to handle listening to if you're listening to us right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, just how poorly she was treated by the justice system after her death and how uh, just horrible. But I do feel like the Duns really tried hard to really change things. I know one of the episodes I was watching, I don't know how old it was, it seemed very old, said that at least at that point, voluntary involuntary manslaughter had increased to like 11 years was the maximum sentence. So, you know, a little bit up. I don't know what it is today. Didn't look that up because I know it kind of varies, but
Yeah, I think it varies from state to state, but it's like also the bigger issue is just that this case should have never been
mhm,
involuntary manslaughter to begin with. Like
no,
it's
no.
absurd. And like we talked about too, the fact that none of his history of violence was allowed, yet they're able to talk about her and talk about her smiling in pictures of her with her bruises and talking about
Mhm.
what he was claiming about her, that she slept around and all these things that should never be allowed to be said about a victim, especially when her abuser and murderer is not allowed to have anything about him said.
Okay, also I'm looking and maybe he was found guilty of voluntary manslaughter, but still not great.
Okay.
Because I was like, am I right on that it was involuntary? I swear a documentary said that, but now Wikipedia is saying voluntary just in case I got that wrong. I don't think it's better, but
But I feel like with 6 years, it had to have been involuntary. Like that's a very short sentence.
yeah.
But again, it was the 90s, so who knows?
Yeah. I could have sworn they said that, but maybe Wikipedia is wrong. But I just wanted to double check that, but
I know sometimes too, different sources will say different things, so it's
that's
hard
true.
sometimes to get accurate information.
But
But yeah, just
yeah.
a very, very sad case, and just so many people who are dealing with these types of situations and don't have the help to get out or don't have the time to get out. Like in this case, it seems like she was pretty done with him, was like, okay, like
Hmm.
I'm ready to move on. And
They always say
yeah,
it's most dangerous for a woman when she's trying to leave, and that's what's just
exactly.
so sad that, you know,
Yeah,
this happened.
definitely. Well, that being said, Courtney, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week, I'm going a little bit in reverse because this was gonna be my perk of the week until we had like microphone issues. And then I had to kind of update my perk of the week. So I'm gonna go back now. And my perk of the week is that, this month I said I was busy and I went on a trip and I got to go up to Baltimore and see my brother-in-law and his girlfriend. And it was just a really fun time. It's always fun to like see family, hang out with them. Already planning like our next times we're all going to see each other. So,
Yeah,
um, very excited for that. It was a very fun trip. Got to go to Philadelphia for the first time, which was exciting. It was
nice.
nice. It was a very nice city. One of those cities where I was like, I could live here. This would be cool to live in.
I think you say that to every city you go to, though.
Not all of them. There
A
have been
good
a
majority
few,
of them.
a good majority. I love a city. That's my one problem with Knoxville is I want desperately to be in a city.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is my perk of the week. Jacqueline, what is your perk of the week?
Yeah, that sounded like it was a good time and a very fun trip. My perk of the week also goes backwards a little bit because, like you said, we had to do the most recent ones and now going back to what we would have had when we originally were supposed to record. Um, is that my daughter started preschool last week, which has been I don't say a transition because that makes it sound bad, but like she's doing fine. Like, it's just me. But she is
Oh.
having a blast. I mean, absolutely loves it. Doesn't even tell me bye anymore. Like we like get to her classroom. By the time I finish like signing her in, like she's off. And I'm like, oh, okay, bye. And then she's just puts her stuff in her cubby and is off and away and playing. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll see you later, I guess. And,
Yeah, she's like, I'm
but
good. Bye bye.
yeah, she's just having a good old time, but it's been very nice and it's very nice for her to have that now and again because she loves it so much. Like that makes it so much easier on me. And it is nice to have a few hours in the morning where I can like work interrupted because I have
Hmm.
worked a full-time job for 3 years now with a child. And so now I'm like, oh, I have like 3 hours in the morning that I can just like sit down and focus and get my work done. And it's crazy. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is great for the 2 months until I have another child. I'll just be right
Until it
back in
all
that
starts
in that loop.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, it's
Yeah.
been very nice for both of us, and she's very excited and having a wonderful time.
Yeah. I'm sure it's good for her too to be
Yes,
able to during those hours also like play with someone whose like job is to play with her on teacher stuff, I'm
exactly.
sure too. But
Exactly. And to have other kids to play with and to have,
yeah.
more like not that they have structured activities, but some structured activities and some just like new toys and things to keep her occupied and, very good for both of us to have
Yeah.
that time. But yeah. So if you guys want to tell us about your trips and your school, or did you kids start back in school? How do you feel about that? Are you happy? Are
How
you
sick are
sad?
you?
Right. I'm looking forward
I'm
to
sure
that
we're all
coming.
sick.
You guys know where to find us. We are on all the places, on all the things. Let us know your thoughts on this case. Were you familiar with this one? Were you familiar with this family? Um, Let us know. We always love to hear from you. And of course, we are also on patreon.com/caffeinated crimes if you want monthly bonus episodes and some behind the scenes unedited video episodes. And we got stickers, we got pins, we have gifts, we have just all kinds of little fun stuff with our different tiers over there. But as low as $3 a month for the first tier where you get all the bonus episodes. So
yeah, it's
and
a
ad-free
great little thing.
episodes. Not that we have a
It's
ton of
true.
ads, but when we do have ads, they're ad-free
Mhm.
episodes. You get all of our two-parters at the same time, It's a fun stuff going on.
A lot of perks there.
Yeah. And you just get to
Um,
support us and pay my child's preschool tuition. Thank you.
make a little bit of a dent in it. Um, yeah, and if you could give us 5 stars on Apple, Spotify, anywhere that has a rating system, 5 is good, 1 is bad. We like 5. If you think it's a 1, let's talk about it before we put it on there.
Yes, reach out to us.
Just reach out. We'll have a civil conversation. Just don't be mean.
Yes.
Um, or if you want to like and subscribe on YouTube, leave us a nice comment there. Yeah, do all those things. We greatly appreciate it. But in the meantime, go have a cup of coffee.
And don't commit a crime.